Hello, 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 and welcome to the Blue Oval Podcast. I am Ben Weissel, and joining me, as always, Garrett Zatlin. How's it going, man?
Ben, I was so excited for this podcast episode. It is the first time where we don't have like a specified list of results we need to go over. There's no, trying to muster reactions and emotions. Not that we have to muster anything for that. But I'm excited to do a little bit more deep dive, subjective analysis with you today. A lot of transfers, a few headline things. So I was looking forward to this as far back as like 2 or 3 weeks ago.
We don't really do conceptual episodes, but this is like as close as I feel like as we get because we can kind of detach ourselves from like and not to say that we don't like you said the day-to-day results. It's just we've been doing that for I mean what, 4 straight months, 3 straight months at this point. So
Yeah.
it's just nice to be able to like you said, talk about other things. And boy, we have a lot to go over between transfer news, pro news, NIL news. We have a lot to hit. Before we get there, we have 81 Apple ratings, still the same as I think the last few weeks. We did get 2 on Spotify. Spotify is going to be doubling up Apple at some point, and
I
as
know.
an Apple podcast person, I'm pretty insulted.
I know. I'm very not happy about it. What I'm also not thrilled about is the YouTube page. Still slow as well. Even though we have Drew Griffith interviews, Elizabeth Leachman interviews from Foot Locker, they're up there straight off of Foot Locker national titles. So go check that out. Again, I told everyone that subscribers of the site are going to get deep access into pretty much everything. But those who also want kind of a sneak peek into some of the in more interesting pieces of video content that we have, the interviews that we have, we've got another one with actually another national champion also in the works. It's about to be put out, a full length interview. So look out for that. But yeah, otherwise go check out YouTube. And so I'm gonna keep plugging that part. Other than that, we have a lot to talk about today, and I think the very first one that we need to talk about is Katelyn Tuohy going pro. It's the worst kept secret, I feel, of the entire year. Initial thoughts and reactions.
We talked about this being a possibility last week. I was hoping against hope, even though I kind of knew it was probably not going to happen, that she would return just to see a few more Parker Volby, Katelyn Tuohy national title races, especially with the way Volby's been running. But Tuohy does, I think, the financially smart thing, the just the smart thing overall, and going pro, striking when the iron's hot. I mean, we've clearly seen that when she's at her best, she is one of the best, if not the best, collegiate we have ever seen. And really, for her to find that next level of competition, to find that next level of fitness for herself, I think she realized she needed to go pro and take it up a level. And that's just a natural progression. And some people get there a little bit faster than others. And she's gotten to that point, and it's really exciting to see what she does as a pro. But it's a bittersweet moment for us who cover the collegiate scene.
Yeah, and I mean it was one of those things where I had a coach text me and they go, did you just know and you just couldn't outright say it? And I go, well, I don't know if that's quite the case. Like kind of yes, kind of no. It was like the everything that I had been hearing suggested that this was going to happen,
Yeah.
but there was nothing concrete solidified. I didn't know anyone within the NC State's program who would have told me that. So, but it just seemed like the natural move. We had heard throughout like the lead up to the summer and the fall that this was going to be like the last dance kind of thing, that Tuohy had done with NC State to kind of get them another cross country title. It makes sense. It's before the new year. She's done everything that she pretty much realistically can. I agree with you. I think, you know, the conversation of whether or not she's the GOAT now, I think, is a little more wide open.
Yeah.
If she had completed this year and done as well as we think she would have, I think there's probably a little bit more of a firm discussion for her. Now I think it's a little bit more wide open. Regardless, yeah, I'm with you. I would have liked to see her race against Volby, but it made sense on pretty much every level. She did sign with Adidas. I don't know if we've actually ever outright said that yet, which is the least shocking thing as well, which also makes me question. She had the NIL deal with Adidas.
How much is
Was anyone
changing?
That's well, so yeah, and I'm sure there's different monetary incentives,
Yeah.
and I'm sure there's the technicalities, money of that nature. I'm sure those aspects, there's a lot of different aspects that are changing that I'm not familiar with, especially because now it can be based on performance. But who else was in the play? Like, who else was in play here,
Yeah.
right? How, what kind of door did that NIL deal open for Adidas? What stipulations could they not include in there? And so it always felt like it was going to be Adidas, but like, what was stopping On or Nike or whoever to come in and say, "Hey, just join us. Yes, we know we have an NIL deal, but just join us." That's the only thing where I just kind of stop and scratch my head and I go, "I wonder how much leverage Adidas really needed to have."
Yeah, I wonder if there's like a if they're able to put in like a right of first refusal or something along those lines, like where they just get the opportunity to match. I mean, at the end of the day, it's probably more a relationship thing, and I think that's why you're seeing, and
Yeah,
we'll briefly touch on a lot of these NIL deals for people who aren't probably going to go pro for at least a few more years, where you're starting that relationship, you kind of get them in your gear, get these athletes comfortable with your stuff, and build the relationship with them so that when they do want to turn pro and you are eager to sign them, it just makes sense. And Tui's had that relationship with Adidas for a while, so I it makes all the sense in the world. I just wonder how often that's going to pay off for companies though, because
true.
aren't that many like just solid, really solid pros that come out of NCAA every year. And Tui's obviously one of the best that we've ever seen. And it's not like a foregone conclusion that she's going to become this great pro either. So I'm curious to see if this is something that's kind of a flash in the pan, or if this is something that people will look at this Adidas structure that they've done with Tuohy and continue to do kind of copycat that.
Yeah, well, you also had that with Charles Hicks too, right?
Yeah.
Who was had the NIL do with Nike, goes to Bowerman. So something just to ponder and consider there. You mentioned NIL deals. Now, isn't it funny? Just a couple days later, then LSU middle distance superstar Michaela Rose, who runs 159 the 800 meters multiple times, may I add,
Hmm.
she gets an Adidas NIL deal, which I thought was very convenient. Now, I will say though, Adidas has a heavy pro investment in the middle distances. I think
Yes.
Aji Wilson. Who else? I'm sure
Bryce
I'm blanking on
Hoppel.
Bryce Hoppel, another great example. I think there's another one on the women's side who I'm just completely blanking on right now. Um, I think
I'm
Allie
thinking,
Wilson.
yeah, like Atlanta
Yeah,
Track Club.
yeah.
I'm thinking like the Michael it was Saruni and
Yeah, I think
are they
Cerrone
Adidas?
was, maybe he was or was it is, but regardless, I
Yeah,
think the whole point is that there's a heavy middle distance investment, and I like that they kind of
yeah.
kept up with that with Rose, and then of course you have the HOKA deals going with Natalie Cook, Cole Matheson, and Karrie Baloga, who we'll touch on later.
Hmm.
Um, all during the foot. So HOKA sponsors Foot Locker National Championships, and they announced the NIL signings on Foot Locker National Championship days, and they're all three of them are former Foot Locker national champions, which I thought was brilliant marketing. I was like,
Yeah.
that's really smart and a nice way to truly leverage the exposure of, hey, we signed these athletes.
Yeah, yep. And again, these are forward thinking moves. Like I don't think any of us expect either of those three athletes to be ready to go pro in the next 2 years. So again, this is, yeah, like you said, leveraging their pre-existing partnership with national championships, and then continuing to build their relationship with young up and coming athletes. So interesting to see how that turns out. Let's transition though to transfers. We have a lot of news in terms of athletes already transferring to a new school, but we also have a lot of athletes who are now on the portal. And let's start with someone that we had highly ranked in our transfer value rankings earlier in the year, and that is Victor Kibiego, headed to the transfer portal. He should have 2 seasons on the grass in cross country, 2 seasons indoor, and then 3 seasons still left of outdoor eligibility. He comes into this year as one of the top contenders in the steeplechase, put together another solid cross country season this past fall. He's someone with the amount of eligibility he has, the capabilities that he has of he very likely, I think, will win an NCAA title in the steeplechase at some point throughout his career. and then you're getting someone who is a very strong candidate to be an All-American on the grass. There aren't that many guys like that hit the open market, and he is going to be in high demand, I believe.
Yeah, and I think he's better on the grass than what he showed this past fall.
Yes.
I'm a firm believer of that. I think just because his schedule wasn't exactly stacked,
No.
which isn't exactly his fault either. He goes to NCAA's, gets 44th. I think he was probably a top 40 guy,
Yeah.
closer to maybe around 30th place. I think it's probably a more fair assessment. But to get someone with the eligibility, with the idea that he could potentially walk into this year as the national title favorite in the steeplechase, depending on what happens with Kenneth Brooks,
Yes.
which I think is something that we continue to slip from our
Monitor.
mind. Like,
Yeah.
what happens now with Rooks now that cross country's done? Um, so I'll be interested. I'll be interested to see. I think we've heard, according to one of our TSR writers who pointed out on Instagram that based on an Instagram post that an SEC school is in contention to land Kibiego. But where do you think is the best spot for him on paper?
Yeah, I'm trying to think some kind of steeplechase school. I mean, Arkansas makes sense in the mold. Like he's a pretty classic guy that they would go after somewhat, like in the Kibiego mold. I think that makes a lot of sense. Um, let me think. Steeplechase school. Do you have one in mind?
I do. So Arkansas was the one that I really highlighted as like,
Yeah.
I just think it's such a natural fit.
Yeah.
They won the cross country. They have steeplechase success in the past. They have been unafraid to go after athletes in the transfer portal. They have been unafraid to go after Kenyans and Africans who
Mhm.
are high impact names at mid majors or at lower levels, and then coming up. It just is a really natural, really strong, great fit. So I like that one a lot. And I'm trying to figure out what the other ones. I think I said like Iowa State would probably make sense. Alabama, again, those schools kind of fit that same exact ethos
Profile.
in terms of
Yeah.
exactly of how they build. I wanted to say like Oklahoma State would make another yeah, right, and that's and here's the wildest part. Maybe they can do it if Mayer's gone.
Yeah. Whew.
Although it
That
depends on
would.
I don't know when Kibiego's coming in. I imagine he's coming in
Yeah.
for this winter. I don't know that for a fact. But if that's the
Oh.
case,
That would be nuts. I Another school that just came to mind is Florida State.
oh
They're
yeah,
not afraid to go big game hunting, and they've had some steeplechase success in the past. I think not necessarily known as a great steeplechase school, but I think that makes a lot of sense for both sides as well.
I like that. That's a great pick. Zach Sedan, is that
Set
it?
in, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Sedan, yeah. I mean, I remember him being such a big fan of his, and so I think it's a very very good pick. Um, moving off of Kibiego though, um, let's go with Silan Ayyildiz, South Carolina. Interesting move. Here's what I can tell you. She's a 432 miler, seventh at SEC XC championships this past year. She's actually sneaky good. She's had two races on the grass this past year, which wasn't a lot, but she was pretty solid
Yeah.
across the board. Strong miler. Wasn't great in the postseason last year, mainly on like the regional and national stages, specifically the national stages. But she's a consistent national qualifier, can score you points. She won an SEC title outdoors in the 1500 meters. I've been told, and I don't know how much of this I can really say right now, but I've been told that she's down to two quote unquote major powers. Um, they're both Power Five, and that's about what I can tell you.
Okay.
But no, with me having that prior knowledge, and I don't think I've told you that yet.
You have not.
I have not. No, I don't think I don't know. I keep these things close to the chest. Where do you see Salon as maybe potentially a good spot for her?
I know this is a quite the departure from South Carolina, and I don't think she's going to go this far away from it, especially it'll be a much longer flight back home to Turkey for her. But I think the new Big Ten schools of Washington and Oregon make a lot of sense for her. I think those are schools where she's going to be with some great teammates pushing her in practice. And the issue with her is has never been fitness. She's clearly one of the best just true milers in the country. It's just about sharpening that and peaking at the right time, getting your tactics down. perfectly for those national championships. And I think going to one of those two schools with great coaches who know how to put together great game plans, being around other great teammates, I just think a program like that takes her from a like an all-American contender to an all-American favorite or even more in the future.
Yeah, and I won't really comment on any speculation that I have, but I can just tell you that in my mind, when someone told me before they even said like, oh, they're looking here and here, I agree with you. I was like, Oregon and Washington make perfect sense. They develop top tier milers who can run well on the grass. And that's pretty much been the ethos of those programs for the past few years, really for as long as I can really remember us covering it. And Salon's exactly kind of like what you would want there, in theory.
Yeah.
So I very much agree. I think those are probably two great spots. You're right. It is a pretty big deviation, I guess, from South Carolina. But also my thought process is like, well, she's from Turkey, so really, like, how much longer does it really matter that, that she's like that she
Well,
would
hopefully she's
the
not
West
going to
Coast?
try to like run, like go back there and run like a national championship in the middle of the NCAA season again, because that was a whole thing like that. I think really
Oh,
threw her season for a loop last year.
I did. I don't even think I'm familiar.
I think she ran like a European championship or some kind of like she I think like a few weeks before indoor nationals last year. I think she made
Oh,
that trek
oh.
back and forth, which I mean, there's other guy like Kai Robinson obviously did that for World
Yeah.
Cross. Like
Hmm.
I'm always amazed that athletes are able to do that. So I think that probably again, I think she's a little underrated right now, and in the right program, I think could be seen as like a huge steal, if whatever school can end up landing her.
Well, speaking of huge steals, Fiona Smith heading to NC State. Those who follow the D1 scene are not going to really know much about her. And there's, you always, there's always a comment or two. It's like D3, Division. Nah, no, no, no. This girl is so good. And she is, I believe, way better than what her current times suggest, including her recent D3 indoor 5K record. College of St. Benedict, recent D3 cross country national champion, won the national title by over a minute. Ran 15:50
Jeez.
for the indoor D3 5K record this at Boston U recently. She has, I think, three other national titles on the track. She's a multi-time, like numerous time All American. And you just like you look at her times, her progression, she has yet to really be pushed. I think she is such a massive steal. I think she could be the Alex Phillip of 2024 on the women's side. Like I really do think she's that good. I don't think we've really seen her full potential.
I mean, Alex Phillip has shown that the transition from the D3 to D1 level can be fairly seamless. Like it again comes down to talent, being in the right program. The only thing I may be a little worried about with her is she is going from D3 to NC State. Like this
Yeah,
is
yeah.
as big of a jump in programs as you're really going to see. I mean, obviously North Carolina for Philip, North Carolina is a great program, but they're not the back-to-back NCAA champions. And I'm just curious to see how that is. She's going to be another great depth piece, someone that has, I think, good high end potential, someone that we might not have seen the best out of yet, like you said. And so that for NC State, I think that's super exciting rather than just getting someone who has been on the D1 level. You already kind of know that they have solid times. They're going to finish like maybe 100th at NCAAs. With Fiona Smith, you get a little bit more of a wild card there, while also getting someone that you feel comfortable should be at least a top seven runner for you. So I think it's a win-win for both. But I hope that I'm glad that she's kind of making this she's making this transition now, right, in the winter, or is she waiting to the fall?
Great question. I think she's waiting for the
Okay.
fall. I
I
think
was gonna say I think it would be honestly better if she went now and just kind of got in the program, got under Coach Hennis a little earlier before cross. But I mean, she's so good
it's
that
next
it might
fall.
not matter.
Next fall.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, for just for me, for like from my perspective, it's like I think what she brings to the table is also so uniquely valuable to what NC State needs,
Yes.
which is they're losing Tuohy, Camille, Bush, Tanisima. There's so much raw firepower. And I'm not saying Smith is going to be a top 20 All American, but do I think she could be a top 40 All American? Yes, I do. And with Leah Stevens having a year of development and Grace Hartman's being her second cross country season, and you bring in someone else new who I'm absolutely sure they will.
Yeah.
Um, I just like it's a very big need, not just because again of what she brings scoring wise, but also like she's a stable veteran. Like she brings some experience to the table for a team that is either really young
Yeah.
or generally pretty inexperienced, right? Some of these women may be like, a couple years older, but they're still really inexperienced because they just haven't had a chance to
Mhm.
crack the varsity lineup. A lot of them are going to be red shirts or redshirt underclassmen or just true freshmen or sophomores, like things of that nature. And I think having a true veteran like Smith in there of her caliber while still having some upside is a massive, massive win.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. And this is a team that kind of needs just one or two people, even if it's for just a year, to kind of come in and stabilize after all those losses, so they can allow that next group to really build and continue to grow this dynasty. Let's transition to Emily Covert of Colorado, who is now on the portal. We believe she has 1 year of cross country left, multiple seasons in indoor and outdoor remaining. She's run 904 in the 3K, 1535 in the 5K, 3230 in the 10K. She is just awesome. She was 50th this past cross country season at NCAAs. And honestly, I think that's about as low as we would really ever expect her to run at NCAAs. Again, not a ton of eligibility, but someone who absolutely comes in as a veteran, a stabilizing presence. You know what you're going to get out of her. She's going to be an All American across all 3 seasons, more than likely. I mean, again, a rare type of runner to come across the portal. Where do you think she's going to end up?
I had heard, I think it was either from someone in our Slack. I'm not sure this, or no, wait. Let me see. I want to say, yeah. I'm still, I'm still not sure how much I want to give away here, but I think I've heard Tennessee that she's looking at Tennessee. I don't know that for a fact. I've heard it from someone who I believe is pretty in touch. But I think Tennessee's on the docket. I think it would make a lot of
Hmm.
sense for Tennessee to
Yep.
try there. That's a young team, but obviously just had massive success. You bring in a low stick veteran to kind of stabilize a lineup that could still be very variable, as we saw this past
Yes.
fall. Carlson is great with grad transfers. I think that makes a lot of sense, but is that a place that I would have first tapped her to? No, I think I would have said something like Northern Arizona, or even NC State, and to some extent, like
Yeah.
that, or Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame would have been another great choice, or could be a great choice. So those are kind of the teams who I would have thought of.
Oklahoma State was one that I was thinking about as
Mhm.
well. I think that makes a lot of sense. They could use someone like her. But yeah, I think you hit on all my top targets. I'm trying to think if there's any Big Ten schools. I mean, I'm sure Michigan would love to have her. But
I
I
feel like
yeah,
Wisconsin might be just
Wisconsin
because
too.
she's a
Yeah.
Minnesota native, right?
Hmm.
So you kind of think about the whole Midwest ethos, excuse me, and you kind of think about that with like where she's from originally.
Yeah.
Wisconsin brings in a big name who we'll touch on next. That kind of makes me wonder. I'm like, oh, I wonder if Wisconsin's in the play. I don't know that for a fact, but just wondering.
Yeah, it's interesting. Again, yeah, she will have the pick of schools. I'm sure there are more than 10 or 20 schools lining up for her in the top of the NCAA. So
Yeah.
it'll be fascinating to see where she ends up. Let's go though to someone who is headed to Wisconsin, Lindsay Cunningham from Winona State, the D2 star. We believe has 1 full year of eligibility across the board, has run 910 and 3K. 1541 in the 5K, 3243 in the 10K. I mean, just a absolute stud. Was one of the best D2 runners that we've really ever seen. What do you think the transition is going to be like for her as she hits the D1 level, specifically in Wisconsin?
It's gonna be really interesting. I think she is probably joining the Big Ten at a really interesting time.
Yep.
Because you kind of look at where the Big Ten is. Michigan State's going to fall off a bit. Like whether
Hmm.
listen, unless they recruit or get transfers galore, and everyone is amazing, and Rachel Forth's just a star from the high school scene. Unless all that happens, I think Michigan State's going to take a little bit of a step back.
Hmm.
I think Michigan still has a lot of rebuilding work to do. You can talk about some of the Big Ten schools that are coming. USC, UCLA, not expected to be factors immediately on the grass. Um, I
Oregon
think
and Washington, though. Yeah.
Oregon and Washington are certainly the ones that are there, but I don't see any like sole individual who I feel is like going to
Yeah.
really blow me away. And I can't help but wonder. I'm like, how how much better are some of these Big Ten women going to be than Lindsay Cunningham on the grass? I don't know how many they are. I mean, we're talking about an all-time great. I don't
Yep.
think she's the goat of D2, but I think she's in the top 10 at least, like at least in the top 10. Um, she's run a D2 record, I think, somewhere, I believe in the indoor 5K, I want to say. She's run crazy fast times. Her PRs are already makes her one of the better ones
Yep.
out there. And I think more importantly for the team race, she's from the Midwest. She went to a Midwest D2 school. She's familiar with the terrain. She's raced D1 competition before at some major meets. And I just think again, she fits like the Wisconsin's identity as a true long distance, gritty, endurance centric program. And I think it's exactly what Wisconsin needs, given how many women they do return, including Leanne Willimise, who was a top 50 runner throughout this entirety of last fall.
Yeah.
I think they were looking at bringing in one or two others. So, I kind of like the position Wisconsin's in right now.
Wisconsin's just been dying for that like tent pole star for them to build a team around ever since Monson's left. I feel like,
Mhm.
and I'm not saying that Cunningham's going to obviously be anything nearly as good as Monson, but I think she has the potential of being that consistent front runner to be maybe pair with Wilma say or a little ahead of her. And I think that just does wonders to your ability, your ceiling as a team, and I think that's going to be really exciting for Wisconsin moving forward. Oh man, I just had one more thought, but I think I lost it. Either way, excellent addition. And anything else on her before we move on?
No, although I could talk about her credentials and how good of a fit she is for forever. So,
Absolutely. All right, let's go to Karrie Baloga. We already mentioned her getting that NIL deal, but she is now on the portal. She has 3 seasons of cross country eligibility, but has not run yet collegiately on the track. So 4 full seasons there, coming off of an 82nd place finish at NCAA's, comes in with great track times from high school: 4:37 mile, 9:23K, 10:27 in the steeple. Just an absolute star. And she looked like she came into the NCAA scene, was fairly consistent, honestly, throughout the
mhm.
year, at running well at Virginia, at Nuttycombe, Pac 12s. Someone that, I mean, again, I've said this a few times, but you just don't see someone with this much eligibility and yet already has a little bit of a proven track record in the NCAA come available. What are your thoughts on what are, maybe tell me what schools should be targeting her, or what schools should she be looking at in the future?
I don't. I really don't know because
It
she's
could be
she's a New York.
anybody.
It could be anyone. She's a New York native, and she's a New York native, and I'm kind of thinking like, okay, does that mean Syracuse is in the mix? In terms of like roster identity, that would make a lot of sense. Um, but then I'm
Does
like,
she
okay,
follow the path of fellow New Yorker Caitlin Tuohy down the coast to NC State?
could she do that, especially for a program that's going to have a lot of scholarship money? I don't know. I guess with Tui now gone, they'll certainly have a scholarship available for right now, at least.
Yep.
Um, it's really fascinating because like her endurance centric, again, skill set suggests like an NAU, NC
Yeah.
State. the classic, top tier powers, things of that nature. Maybe even Tennessee, up and coming program, really, building around the youth there. But in terms of like geographic location with when we don't really know athletes personally, we don't have any like direct connection to them.
Hmm.
A lot of the times we can just lean on geographic location
Yeah.
as a key aspect of where someone's going to land. Not all the time, but we just explained that with like Cunningham, right? Midwest, so on and so forth. I I, I kind of want to like wonder if like Notre Dame's in the mix. I kind of want to wonder if like Virginia is in the mix. Teams that are have a lot of either really good young recruits or really good current strong underclassmen, things of that nature. It's I'm still not entirely sure yet. What do you think?
If I'm Will Palmer and
Hmm.
really want to make a statement that, hey, like we're building something that's going to last here. We're not going to just get some graduate transfers that are going to like carry us for a year or two and then we'll maybe fade back into just challenging just to get into the NCAA meet. I'm going after Karrie Baloga. Like
Yeah.
that's someone you build a program around and is can I mean, no one's the next Volby, but is someone that you can build that next generation around while also supplementing the rest of that group that's still going to be there next year. I think that's again, I don't know if that makes sense for Balaga, but that's the kind of big splash that I think Palmer's proven that he can recruit well off the portal. This is a different kind of deal with how much eligibility she has. But I think that's what makes sense for Florida to really be aggressive with someone like her.
Yeah, and I don't think I'm spoiling anything here when I can say like from who from what I've heard, he's been very active and
Oh,
still,
I'm
and
sure.
that would make sense, right? Just given what they did this past summer in terms of trying to go after some top names. So, um, yeah, it doesn't surprise me. Also, fun fact before we move off of Balaga, uh, those HOKA NIL deals. Natalie Cook left Oklahoma State to go to Colorado. Bill Mattinson is in his rookie year right now at Colorado. Karrie Balaga was at Colorado and is now leaving.
Yeah,
Very
that is
odd
interesting.
dynamic there. Yeah, so that's all I have.
Huh. Yeah, hadn't thought about that. That's interesting. All right, let's run through just a few names here. We'll start with Wilma Nielson, headed from Bradley to Washington. Has 1 season on the grass in cross country, 3 seasons though of eligibility. We think indoors, 2 outdoors. She's run 202 in the 8, 238 in the 1,000 and 411 in the 1,500 meter. Looked like I think what was it last winter that she was going to be one of those breakout stars. We haven't seen a ton from her since, but that potential is still there. There's not a lot of 202 800-meter runners around, and this move to Washington I think couldn't be a better fit for both athlete and team.
Completely agree. I mean, for me, the 1K. Remember when she ran that 1K, the
Yeah, we were
2:38.95,
so excited.
and we were like, "Oh my god, she's so good!" Like, I knew she was like talented, but that like last winter was such a leap beyond what she had
Yeah.
ever done before. And when I think about Washington, they have Sophie O'Sullivan, they have Carly Thomas, they have
Hmm.
Melina Prey, they have Chloe Forster, who I think is actually a pretty decent underrated miler. Who else am I even thinking of like right now? I'm trying to think off the top of my head. I mean, there's probably one other miler who I'm
Yeah.
not thinking of right now, but Tori Herman, who they brought
Yes.
in. But you kind of just start going down the list. It is an extensive list of top tier names, and it's perfect because what Washington loves to do is they love to go to the DMR,
Hmm.
and by having Nielsen here, you get so much flexibility with who you can put in and out of that DMR lineup. You can switch it around as many ways as you'd like. You can have someone go fresh. You can have someone double at the national meet. It is for this season, and she's joining this winter. I
Yeah.
think for what they like to do on the indoor track, specifically related to the DMR and doubling back on those day one prelims, this is a phenomenal pickup, and it's exactly what they need.
She can run almost any leg on that DMR. Like
Yeah.
you could probably even put her in the 4. Like yeah, she has Perfect range, and yeah, that as a DMR piece will be huge from the get go. And even if she doesn't even run at NCAA, she will be huge for qualifying them and put setting them up for success there. We have a bunch of other names, so I'm gonna run through maybe like two or three of them at a time, and then we can riff on a few of them. Lucy Jenks on the portal, 1 full year of eligibility left. Evan Bishop on the portal, 1 season of cross, but 2 on the indoor and outdoor ovals. Dan Watcke on the portal as well, the freshman from Oregon who did not race for them at all this past year, so has 4 full years of eligibility. Came into Oregon as one of the top recruits in the country. How about those 3 names? I mean, any feel for maybe someone like Bishop where he could end up just coming off an 83rd place finish at NCAA's, has decent track times, would be a big pickup for anybody in their back end of their roster, or not their roster, back end of their lineup in cross country.
Well, I think you might be thinking of McIntyre as the third, 82nd. He was 82nd.
Oh, 80.
Oh, in
Yes,
20 in
sorry.
20 in 2022.
2022. Yes.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry,
Yeah.
for Bishop, yes, in 2022 he was 83rd.
Sorry.
So for Bishop, I know he's looking at other schools beyond this, but I can also I've been told by multiple people that he's looking at Oregon, and I
Mm.
think I've been told that UNC is also in the picture as well. There
Interesting.
are other schools, yes. I know there are other schools in play, but regardless, that is not where I thought he would be
That's a
looking at.
wide range. You got both
Yeah,
coasts right there. So that basically gives us free reign to speculate wherever.
basically. And what's interesting with that Oregon thing is that like you'd think it wouldn't go after like a Big Ten program. Like he's a Midwest Michigan guy. You think like Notre Dame's like the perfect spot for him,
Yeah.
right? Because it's non-conference, still Midwest, great academic school. You're not going to directly compete with Wisconsin. Um, but Bradley McIntyre, I think, going back to him, seeing him land at South Carolina, if you're Brock Moreau, you should be given a medal right now. Coach Brock Moreau at South Carolina, new guy who just came in from New Orleans. He got a cross country centric guy to join a program that doesn't have a men's cross country program. That's so impressive.
And Bradley McIntyre headed to South Carolina from Tulane, has 1 full year of eligibility, and he was 82nd at NCAA. So yeah,
Right.
I don't understand this move at all. But I mean, South Carolina's proven to be able to attract top talent. And I mean, they must really believe in his ability to turn into a point scorer for them on the track, to make this move. And he must have barely been sold on being able to improve to his best abilities at South Carolina. As for Bishop, though, I a school that I keep coming back to for a lot of these men, Colorado. Colorado just needs an injection of
Yeah,
talent
he would be
so
perfect.
bad. I and
You follow
yeah,
the Seth Hirsch profile.
yeah, exactly. And like
Makes
he
sense.
doesn't have a ton of eligibility, but like they just need shoring. They need to shore up that lineup until they can get another recruiting class or 2 in to really be able to like replenish their roster. And I think that makes a lot of sense.
Lucy Jenks, where do you like her heading?
um.
She's
Hmm.
a Massachusetts native.
Okay,
For the
that's good to
record.
know. So again, both coasts available then if she wants to stay out west. I think Virginia probably makes a little bit of sense for
Oh,
her.
okay.
I think
Yeah.
again, someone who can be competitive across all 3 seasons, has a little bit of middle distance chops. I think that might be a nice piece for them to kind of give themselves another solid veteran presence as they continue to kind of take steps forward as a program.
Saw someone comment Georgetown. Thought that was a really
Yeah.
smart suggestion. Strong academic school, East Coast. They usually bring in grad transfers, at least one or two.
Yep.
Not afraid to land good ones for that matter. And then here's another one that I think you gotta stay with me here. Boston College. She's from Massachusetts. Um, Pete Watson just has recently landed Emma Tavella and Lily Flynn, who were 2 key pieces in that lineup this past fall, both of which were from the West Coast grad transfers from the Pac 12. Lily Flynn went to Stanford previously before she came to Boston College. In terms of that program becoming more competitive now, that just on paper everything aligns there. Whether or not it's a strong academic school as well, that would just be a thought that jumps into my head. I go, oh, I wonder how much of a role they could play.
That would be quite the, I think, sign of intent from Watson, and also just would open the doors for a lot of other athletes to come. Because I mean, obviously those two other transfers are solid names, but they're not Lucy Jenks. Like
Right.
that's another level of an athlete to be able to attract as a grad transfer. I like it though. I like that a lot. I think that would be, that's something that kind of changes the way a program is seen. I
Yeah.
think to a lot of athletes,
Hmm.
if someone like Lucy Jenks is willing to go
Yeah.
there. Yeah, so good call there for Watcke. So he went to high school right near where I live. So wouldn't be shocked to see him end up back in the Midwest or the east more eastern coast. But he's just someone that, again, we haven't seen him run in the NCAA, but from his high school times, would be a huge pickup for any program. Obviously has a ton of eligibility there as well. I think Notre Dame probably makes a lot of sense for him as well. And then we didn't mention Maeve Stills of Penn going to Washington. She has 2 years on the grass, 1 year in indoor, 2 years of outdoor eligibility. Was just 60th at NCAA's this past year, 916 and 3K, 1555 and the
You mean in
5K,
2022?
or in 2022, excuse me. Yeah.
Right.
And again, another really nice pickup for Washington, a solid depth piece for them. And be curious to see if she can find a little bit more speed going to this Washington program and improve those maybe lower distances, but a very, very just solid piece, I would say.
Yeah. I want to say Watke. What is it? How do you say it?
Watke.
Dan Watke. Thank you. I'm always the worst at that. Watke. I was told again by someone who I have not yet confirmed this, but someone who's pretty plugged in said Virginia Tech or UNC for him.
Okay.
So again, don't know if there's a third one that could come in. Maybe that's very possible. Don't again. This is all still evolving. That's why I'm hesitant to even say these things. But as of right now, that was from someone who I believe is pretty tapped in. Virginia Tech and UNC are there. Styles, I think this is a good one. I think she's the cross country version of Wilma Nielson. I think she's a
Yeah,
good
it's a good pick.
plug and play kind of like, is she going to be the main focal star? No, but I think she's better than what she showed this past fall. I think not only that, but Washington returns so many of their women,
Yeah.
many of whom are going to be in their athletic primes, going to be hitting their collegiate peaks as experienced upperclassmen. And now you bring in Styles, who I think still has a higher ceiling, is going to be experienced, is actually generally pretty good in the postseason.
Yeah.
I think that's a really nice, stable piece, and it kind of like makes me think like, okay, maybe the postseason success that Washington had this past year, maybe that's still within reach with Styles there, and I don't think that's completely out of the reach.
No, it's, and again, you just keep bringing in these talented individuals, and you don't need all of them to hit or at least run at 100%. You just hope that like one or two of them do to supplement your pre-existing very good lineup. And she's almost as good of a sure of a bet as you can ask for in terms of her veteran experience. Anybody else that we missed that we should touch on?
No, I mean, there's some that we just haven't reported yet, just because there's only so much we can do. It's the holidays, everyone. But no, I think that was it. Nice job. We were very good, very efficient. I think we hit on a lot
Yes.
of it.
Absolutely. I mean, this like you said, we're both looking forward to this episode. Um, we'll probably circle back on a lot of these names when they decide where they're going. So
Yeah.
keep an eye on the site. Obviously, continue to listen to the podcast because while them being on the portal is big news, where they actually end up, even bigger.
Even bigger, correct. And not only that, but you can not only listen to the podcast, you can watch the podcast. You can look at our faces if you really want on YouTube. right? So go there and go subscribe. We've got a bunch of different post race stuff there. We post some interviews there. TSR subscribers do get first access to a lot of that. So FYI there. We've got a lot of Foot Locker content out there. Angela May went out there. Awesome. He's been so great for us. We really appreciate you, Andrew. Thank you. And we've got indoor track preseason rankings coming up pretty soon. Maybe even by next week. This time we'll be talking about it. So really excited for that part. D1, D2, D3. We've got some class of 2024 recruit rankings. And I think this December is a really big time for us to prepare for what I think is going to be a really special 2024. So that's all I really got.
No better way to cap an episode than that. Until next week, I'll talk to you.
I'll talk to you.